All right, we are live here today with Kelley, long arm of the law. Just kidding, that's horrible. Don't let me do that again. Armstrong. Absolutely. I'll get to the book in a second. I will tell you I absolutely loved it, but we'll get into why. First question I like to ask every author: what is your supervillain origin story?
Mine is that I was reading very early. I was the first kid in our family, and my parents were determined that I was going to be a reader. So they set me out reading as soon as they you could every night after dinner, reading books. And so as I got into reading, I started telling my own stories. Before I could even write them down, and those were probably like fanfic type of things. Like I would hear a book and I would make up new stories with those characters or in that setting. So I don't actually remember a time that I wasn't telling stories. So I just kind of I think that that is just what I grew up doing. Even if I didn't think I was going to become a writer, it was my dream.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah. We did that to our kids. We just turned them into readers, so neither one of them
Mhm.
became an author, but they do have their book collections.
Yep.
So, two more questions that I like to ask for the aspiring authors in the
Mhm.
viewership, and then we'll get into the book stuff. But first one I like to ask: what, when it comes to writing, does a day in the life of Kelley Armstrong look like?
It's pretty set. I've been doing this for a very long time. The kids are all grown up, so it's my husband and I, and that makes it a lot freer. So I can very much have my schedule. So I get up. I'm going to do editing in the morning when it's nice and quiet, and I'll just be editing for a few hours. Then I'm going to switch to writing for a few hours, and then later, when my brain starts getting tired, it's that businessy stuff, the business, the marketing, the promotion, whatever else I have to do that doesn't require quite as much creativity.
Stuff like this, and then doesn't have to be writing advice, although it
Mhm,
can. But if you had a young author in front of you, or if you had a young Kelley Armstrong in front of you, and
mhm.
you wanted to give them a piece of advice, what do you think you would lead with?
Honestly, it's hang in there. If this is what you want to do, keep doing it. And don't let the goal of publishing get in the way of the joy of writing. If you're someone like me who loves telling stories, it's very easy to get caught up in getting published. So I would go through those cycles where I would write a book, send it out, get rejected, not write for 6 months, and then say, "Why am I not writing? I love writing." Getting published isn't the end all. So I would say to just, if you love writing, don't let the publishing part stop you from doing it, because it can take a very long time to get published.
Yeah, there's not too many overnight successes in
Mhm.
writing, and even if they seem like it, there was a whole lot of, stuff going on before the overnight success happened.
Yeah.
The joys of being able to cut that out. Sorry, got a little just finished dinner, it's eh. Alright, so I do wanna talk about the book, obviously. I don't feel like it's going to be spoilerish to say it's got a Legends of Sleepy Hollow kind of background or flavor or vibe or however you want to call that. I do want to say before I ask any questions though, I really, really, really liked this book. Your writing is so easy, and I just got engrossed in the story and just like I'd sit down to read a chapter, and 10 chapters later, I'd be like, I've got stuff to do. So really enjoyed that.
Good.
Was there anything else? I mean, obviously, you do have that a little bit of Legends of Sleepy Hollow vibe going in the
Mhm.
background, but there's a lot of other stuff too. What would you say else was a main influence for you in writing almost said series, in writing this book?
I think for the horror, I especially like to dive into the tropes that I like. So with each book, I'm thinking, what is a trope in horror? Because I've been reading horror since before I was far too young for it. Uh, Getting to play with a trope in each book. So for this one, it started with that trope of inheriting a haunted house. where you inherit. It ends up. I end up playing with it, and it's not really a haunted house. It's a piece of property with weird things going on. But it's this idea that in order to inherit it, you need to live there for a certain amount of time, and we've seen this done many times. So I kind of like to play with those and think, how can I take something that I really enjoy reading and put my own spin on it? So that's kind of where it started. And then the Sleepy Hollow stuff gets pulled in, and then there's some other mythology being pulled in. So I'm kind of weaving a bunch of things together with it.
Yeah, I also think you did a good job of, and I'm not gonna tell anybody which one is which. You did a good job of bringing us almost to the end and still playing that balance where, like, is there something supernatural going on? Is she a little, not quite there, and, she's the one actually perpetrating these things that happen? And I love the fact that I'm not gonna tell you, but I love the fact that you don't find out till very close to the end which one is actually the truth.
Mhm.
Um, I also wanna say you wrote some very interesting characters. I feel like even though we never actually meet him while he's alive, the fact that you made Grandpa, uh, this overlord, almost feels like a very evil character, even though you kinda know why he's doing some of what he's doing or, did. Uh, but also the fact that the way he does some of this stuff is really, dude, that's full jerk mode. Come on now. Was it okay, I almost asked you, is that based on anybody, but that no, we're not gonna go there. Uh, what maybe was your what was he early on in the process that you wanted him to be this particular character? Because I feel like he's even though he's not really in the story, he's kind of the groundwork.
He is, and it is the idea of somebody who is so he is completely engrossed in the idea that his son could not have committed this crime. And to me, although it's never made completely clear in the book, to me, it's not about him not wanting his son to have been guilty, but him not wanting the family to have been tainted by this. That although he would certainly say, "Oh, it's about my son. I know my son could not have done this." He's more saying his family has been tainted by what his son allegedly did, and he's so determined to prove that it didn't happen that he's willing to mow down his granddaughter and her trauma, really to reignite trauma in order to save the family name. This very old concept of that, while it's never spelled out in my mind, that's what's going on with him, is how to save the the illustrious family name. The town is named after them. Old money, that kind of idea.
Yeah, and without going into details, because I can't remember how early it is, and it's probably not spoilery, but as Kelly is alluding to, there is a very bad thing,
Mhm.
trademark, infringing, that happened, and that this is kind of all the fact that she's going back to this place and has to live in this quote unquote haunted house is basically to face what had happened. Um, even though probably I would say even her therapist probably wouldn't tell her this was a good
Oh,
idea.
yeah. Yeah. It is not. It really is forcing somebody to go back and face trauma, but she lived through the trauma, so I'm not sure what she's actually facing, but it is this idea that he is so determined to, prove that it couldn't have, happened, that he's lost any relationship that he could have actually had with his granddaughter over it.
Yeah. I did actually, even though we don't get to meet her, I did like her therapist who basically had told her, just accept it, deal with it, and then you can move on. Instead of, sometimes people are like, well, let's work out your feelings about this. It's like, no, you have to start from the fact that this was the truth. And so deal with it. So I
Mhm.
really, I really like some of your characters that weren't on the page much, to be honest with you, which I think is a hard thing to pull off because there was always kind of these off screen people. I also love the fact, and again, I'm not going to tell anybody who's who. There are some characters in this book who are very much who they say they are, and there are some characters who are very much not who they say they are. And again, you kind of don't let us know who's who till very, very close to the end, which I
Mhm.
appreciated. How hard is that to juggle? Keep straight who's gonna be, or did you kinda know from the beginning who was gonna be the bad guy and the good guy, or did they change as you wrote them?
I kind of knew what the backstory was, so I knew what had happened and who was at fault, and that has to all be seeded in. One of my sons actually read this book. He was reading it for a book club thing, and he has not read any of my stuff since he was a kid. And he's not read horror in a very long time. And he was like, there are some twists, as you said, with like who characters are. And he's like, I did not see that coming. And I said, but if you look back at this, and this, you will see that that was seeded in there. And he's like, you're right, it was in there. So you have to, as you're going, seed it in so that if someone did a reread, they would say, oh, I totally see how that was set up, how that character, their story is in there, what they're doing, how they're manipulating things is in there. And so that is tricky. I will say that for this one about knowing how things are going to play out. There, it's a fairly small cast of characters, and the main character has a very limited number of allies. And in horror, as you know, uh, most people die. So I really did, my literal outline had 2 characters named saying, "I know one of these is going to die, and I'm not sure which." And I did not know until very near the end, like, thematically, how does it play out? And you I needed to get to know them to see how the themes were running and say character's death which character's death has more impact for the theme and propels the story along, better. So, yes.
Gotcha. I won't ask you during the interview, but I have a feeling I know which 2 characters you were waffling between.
Mhm, yep.
I also have to say there were some reveals that you had that part of me kinda wants to say, "Yeah, I figured it out before you revealed it," but I also
Mhm.
figured it out about this close before you revealed it, so I can't
Good.
give myself a pat on the
But
back.
that is honestly perfect, and I always say that. I say that the best twists, I think, are ones that at least some readers will figure out just beforehand. So they feel like, yes, they got it, but not so because I do hate it when I figure out a twist like, on chapter 3, and I'm like, "Oh, is this what the big twist is?" And it is. But I do like it when I figure it out just just before the, characters do.
Gotcha, gotcha. You did have there is, Alzheimer's, I believe,
Mhm.
early onset dementia in this book. Is that something that you have any, and you don't have to answer this, do you have, like, a personal connection to somebody, or is that just a theme that you wanted to have for the story? Because it does fit
Mhm.
for where the story went.
Right. The Alzheimer's I do have, connections with, not the necessarily the early onset, but the early onset was what I wanted to deal with in the book was the idea of knowing that that runs in your family and dealing with that from an early on, and then also having my character be relatively young while caring for her mother. So the character is like my kid's age, so her mom is like my age. So you wanted this idea that mom is needing round the clock care at a relatively early age, and so her daughter Sam has never had the chance to like launch her career, did not finish her education. So you're kind of balancing timelines, going, what could have happened to the mother that would mean that the daughter did not finish her education and is struggling so much to provide the care that is more something that someone my age would be providing for a parent.
Exactly. Alright. Trying to think of, don't wanna spoil anything. Um, can always edit out this pregnant pause. because I had a question while you were talking, and now, yeah, I was so interested in what you said, I forgot what I was gonna ask you. Um, so oh, that's what I was gonna ask you. Obviously, you talk, and I won't say what it is because I want people to discover it when we get to it in the book, but you did talk about there's some other folklore in there,
Mhm.
and you brought up the fact that this one piece of folklore, which I think you know what I'm talking about, is spread through all of these different societies, different cultures have had a version of this story. Is that something that you're interested in and knew going in, or is that something that you had to do a lot of research to figure out what you were gonna do with this story? Um, how much time, went into the
Yeah,
research
how
part?
time. So I knew what branch of research I wanted to be dealing with. I didn't know the specific, like, background of it. So I knew I'm going to deal with this particular branch of it. I'm not sure whether I'm going to go from, this culture ended up going from, both basically Dutch because it also makes sense for the area the area, that Dutch, settling it. But yes, I am personally fascinated by folklore that takes place in a lot of places. I mean, I got my start in werewolves. So this idea of a certain branch of folklore that we see that has either arisen independently in different areas, or somebody tells somebody a story and then they change it for their own culture, for their own land landscape. So you see something very similar, and this is one of those types.
Nice, nice. I'm just always curious to see, what little piece of information, s germinates and like, "Ooh, let's do that.
Mhm.
Where did that come from?" Again, because of the fact that this is such a book of twists and turns, and is it real? Is it in her head? And again, I'm not gonna tell you which one that is. I'm afraid to touch on a couple of questions, so let me do this. No, this is gonna be a little shorter than I normally do, but again, I don't wanna give anything away. Is there anything that you wanted to say about the book that we haven't talked about specifically?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think we have, covered everything.
Yeah, there's certain types of books where there's just, like, only, like, certain sort of mysteries and certain type of horrors where it's like, "I can ask you this, this, and this, but
Right.
this is gonna give something away, and I don't
I
wanna do that."
can't, yeah, exactly, right? If you delve too deeply into questions, then it gives away twists. So yeah.
Yes. I do have to say, and by the time this posts, the book will be dropping tomorrow, uh,
Mhm.
A, obviously perfect for spooky season. B, if you're in a book club and you're looking for something for spooky season, this is what I call that sweet spot where it's just under 300 pages. Uh, I've worked at a couple of bookstores, and I quickly learned that book clubs do not like 300 plus page books
Oh,
because,
really?
well, a lot of these, especially if some of these people's like, I've got to read this book for book club, so they've
Mhm.
got to get it done in the month, and especially if it's not the book they picked, they don't want to, commit to a chonker. So
Mhm.
'cause there's a lot of book clubs that do not touch epic fantasy at all. Uh,
Right. That makes sense. I find that horror is probably the shortest books that I, write because keeping that tension up and keeping everything moving, I find that it kind of comes in around an 80,000 word sweet spot for me, whereas novels are usually 100,000 plus. If it's mystery or something, it ends up being, like, longer, so.
yeah, this is I don't know how I don't want this to sound like it's a critique because it's not, but this is one of the weird. I read a lot of horror books, and a lot of times they'll be like a horror book I feel like ended just where it needed to be. It's like, it's a little short, but anything else would be filler. And this book, I somehow got to the end of this book and thought, I kind of want a little bit more, but I don't know what I'd add. And I think that was mainly even more the writing than maybe this particular story.
Mm.
I loved your writing so much that I didn't want the book to end. Um, but yeah, I really feel like if you had added 50 to 100 pages, what would it have been? I mean, what?
What would it have been? It would have just been more spooky stuff happening, and I always feel like
Yeah,
it has to be this escalation, escalation, and after a while, it just starts to stretch out where you feel like that nothing's propelling it forward in the same way.
yeah. I will say this one thing, and I don't think this is a spoiler. I still don't know how somebody got in the shed. it gets mentioned that they were in the shed.
It
I
is,
still don't know
it
how they got in
is.
the shed. This is part horror and part locked room mystery, it's all I'm saying.
It is, it is.
No, but, yeah, every like I said, every single twist and turn, even when you did a couple people wrong, I really felt like, enjoyed it in the fact that a lot of them weren't what I expected to happen. Some of them weren't even what I wanted to happen,
Mhm.
but they fit the narrative, they drove the story forward, and they made me wanna get to the next page.
Good.
So, yeah. I would joke with people sometimes, like, when I first started, doing author interviews, for instance, I had no clue what I was doing, so I would read a book and, then I reach out to the authors like, "Hey, you wanna talk about blah, blah, blah." And now that I'm doing a little bit more of these, sometimes I'm scheduling the author before I read the book, and I'm like, "I hope I like the book. I hope I like the book. I hope I like the book." And I have been very, very lucky.
Good.
I have to say 99% of the books I've absolutely loved. One, I still liked enough that I had stuff to talk
Mhm.
about. I won't say who that is. Um, but yeah, this one, I was so happy that we talked and got together, and I got to shout out to, can't remember who's I don't wanna say the wrong one. Who's your publisher on this one?
Macmillan.
Macmillan, okay.
Mhm.
That would explain it. Macmillan, Tor, all those guys over there in the Macmillan Press, they are great with me, always get me, whatever I need for
They are
an
very
author
good.
interview.
Yeah.
So I appreciate them getting this to me so I could read it before I talk to you. Um, I've seen people who have interviewed authors that I know did not read the book, and it feels
Mhm.
awkward. But yeah, I love to be able to talk about the book and kinda drop it, like I said, the night before the book drops. So if somebody sees the interview, they're like, "That does look interesting." It's like, "You've only gotta wait one more day, it'll be fine."
Mhm.
But yeah, absolutely love this book. Gotta add some more stuff of yours to my list now. I've gotta check out some of your backlist. I did a whole section where I was in fantasy, and I'm
Mhm.
starting to get back into horror, and I'm starting to find some of
Mhm.
you guys that I missed. And I'm like, "Okay, there's another one that I've gotta check that backlist and see what you got." Uh, Also, just quick thank you. I'm talking too much on this part, but a quick thank you, for sending me in your suggestions also for our horror recommendations
Oh,
video.
good.
Love that, got that out there. Uh, that was even bigger than last year, so appreciate you on that.
Good.
Now, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna ask you a few
Mhm.
questions, let you talk. Um, First and foremost, what are you reading right now, if anything?
Mhm. I am listening to an audiobook, mostly because currently reading my own stuff. I'm on proofreads for a book, which I'm just in that season where I swear that everything comes out at once, and I spend months going through edits, copy edits, proofs, and I feel like I'm only ever reading my own stuff. So it's much easier for me to audiobook everything, else. And I am listening to Oathbound by Tracy Dion. It is the third in her excellent Legendborn series. It's one of the few like trilogy series that I've actually pretty much read back to back. Normally, I'm kind of like I'll read one, I'll enjoy it, I'll wait a year, I'll read the next, even if it's already out. But I have read all three of these in the past year. So yes, big recommendation from me.
Nice, nice. And then what are you working on right now? If you
I
can say.
am Yeah, yeah, no, I'm writing book 6 in my time travel, mystery series, my, Rip Through Time series, which is a modern day police detective from, Vancouver and it ended up in 1869 Edinburgh, working for a early forensic scientist. So, I am at book 6 on that. So, I am proofreading book 5 while starting book 6, which is as complicated as it sounds.
Well, on the plus side, at least, book 5 is probably gonna be fresh in your mind while you're reading book
And
6.
that's exactly it. As I'm going through, I'm like, "Ooh, right, that's right. I need to, mention that in book 6." Yes.
I do have to say I'm always impressed with authors because I know not all of you, but most of you, when you hop on to talk about a book like Payne's Hollow, you're talking about a book you wrote 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Probably written 2 to 3 books since then, and you're trying to
Yep.
remember everything that happened.
That's exactly it. You're saying, like, how did he get into the shed? And I'm like, I know that I did have this figured out. There was an answer to it, but
Yeah.
I am currently blanking on that.
No, no worries. What's coming out next? Is that gonna be book 5 or is that something else?
No, out next after Payne's Hollow, I've got another mystery series that and the book comes out in February. So my Rockton series, which is small town in the Yukon where people go to disappear. That one's kind of wrapping up. So
Yeah. And let's face it, Payne's Hollow could probably slide into a couple of genres. It's definitely horror. It's a little bit
mhm,
psychological thriller. It's a
yeah,
little bit murder mystery. I mean, you got options.
yep.
All right. Fun question I like to ask
Mhm.
everybody. Is there a can't think of the word I'm looking for. Is there a hobby or an accomplishment or a skill that you have that you wish more people knew about so you talk about something besides writing once in a while?
Exactly, right? And I feel like that's especially true, I think, in social situations where I almost hate it when anyone realizes that I am a writer because all they want to talk about then is writing. And I'm like, believe me, I talk about that all the time. Can we talk about my kids? Can we talk about my hobbies? Can we talk about anything else? Because once they hear you're a published author, that's literally everybody. Like that's all they want to talk about. I would be much happier talking about movies. I worked in a movie theater for many years just to get the free passes. I would be happier talking about gaming. I've been gaming since I was young and still gaming, but no, everybody wants to talk about writing, and they have this great idea for a book, and do I want to write it with them?
Yeah, I always love the ones like, "I've got a great idea, I just need you to write it," because obviously the great idea is the hard part, right?
And it's like I have more ideas than I will ever have time to write. It's the execution that takes the work.
Yeah, there's definitely certain like, my wife's a nurse, so of course, "Oh, let's talk about medical thing," or, I
Hmm.
used to be in IT, it's like, "Hey, can you come look at my computer?" I can look
Yep.
at it. But don't worry, I don't have a manuscript for you, so that
Hmm.
wasn't what brought that question up. And then one question I love, got 2 left. This one is the open-ended question, though it's basically a
Hmm.
freebie. You can talk about anything you want, but I always like to ask an author, is there anything you either thought we would talk about or wanted to talk about that hasn't come up yet?
Honestly, there's nothing. I mean, I always get asked that, and I'm sure that other authors have great answers. And someday I will have prepared a wonderful answer for. Is there anything else you want to talk about? And I'm like, nope, nothing. I'm good.
You are not alone. I would say it's probably not I haven't done the math, but it's probably about 50-50. Half the authors
Yep.
are like, "No, I think we covered everything I wanted to talk about," and then every once in a while, it's like, "Yeah, whenever I get an opportunity, I like to talk about blah, blah, blah,"
Hmm.
or,
Yeah.
whatever their case is, and, I'm fine with that. This is an open forum. I don't censor my authors.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I just love to give you the opportunity. And then the last question, because I love my brick and mortars. I worked at a couple of bookstores now. I always ask every author to give a shout out to a brick and mortar bookstore of their choice.
Yeah, and that would be Little Ghosts in Toronto. It is a relatively recently opened last few years. The older you get, the more recently opened is like the last 5 years. It is a horror bookstore, and I was delighted to have an actual, horror-centered bookstore opened in Toronto. So shout out to them.
Trust me, I'm even worse on that. I have like my wife will tell you I have no sense of time. She has no sense of space, so I have to figure out what size Tupperware
Mhm,
everything goes in. But I have no sense of time. I'll be like, "Yeah, that just happened a couple days ago." It's like, "That happened 7 years ago." It's like, "Never mind,
yep,
dear." But yeah, it's, the more memories you have, I think the more your sense of time gets messed
mhm,
up. All right. I think that is it, is a little bit on the short side, but there's nothing wrong
mhm,
with that. You had like I said, this is one of those books that I absolutely loved, but I also, again, I never wanna
mhm.
ruin it for somebody else. There are parts of this book that you're gonna have to discover on your own. It is out tomorrow. Definitely, guys, go pick it up. It's perfect for horror season. It's perfect for your book club. you've got no reason. You will definitely finish this. I think I could have finished it in 2 days, if I didn't have a full-time job, uh, just because once you sit down, next thing you know, you're 10, 15 chapters in, and you don't know where the time has gone. Uh, but anyhow, I appreciate you, Kelly, for taking some time out. Glad you had you on here. Definitely looking forward to whatever is next in your book series. Now that I've discovered how much I love your writing, I've got to check out the backlist and also keep an eye out for the future.
Yeah.
And unless you've got anything else to add, I think that is probably going to do it for us tonight.
I do not. Thank you very, very much. It was a great chat. Thank you.
Thank you, man.